you helped create such an intriguing sci-fi world, and one where you could have gone a lot of different directions with the story and it would still stay compelling. So what did make you want to center this story between, Joshua Taylor and Alfie? Because, that connection, if it didn't land with fans, it wouldn't have worked. But thankfully, that bond is really great to watch unfold. So how did you kind of decide to center the film around that storyline?
There was a few various things that contributed to it. I liked, obviously, like about around about 2000, I was doing, used to do visual effects, and I was working from home, and this film appeared on the TV, and it just captivated me instantly. There was something about the dynamic, and I found out later it was Lone Wolf and Cub series. It was of Japanese films, which is basically an old sort of samurai Ronin and a young little kind of emperor child Buddhist little kid, um, and I just love that imagery and that kind of dynamic, like sort of reluctant father, jaded warrior, and it's a trope now that's been in a lot of things, and but I always wanted to do a film like that for the very longest time, and after Star Wars, I had been playing, I knew I wanted to make a film about AI or about robots next. And I was just toying with different things. And for the longest time, the polarity was a bit different. And I flipped it to be about the child being the robot. Um, and and it suddenly became quite achievable. And I like the idea of a story where it's like Rain Man or something, where two opposite people who like ideally are on opposite sides of a conflict, even the kind of enemies, are forced together to survive together on a journey or in a situation, and through that journey they learn from each other that the other person or the other side is not what they thought, and actually, we're kind of all the same, and that all this idea of conflict and hate goes away when you spend time or have to like lean on another person to survive. And I think and I just think there's a nice point about life and society and everything and war with that central relationship. And it just felt right. Obviously, if we hadn't found the right child actor, it would have fell apart. And so I feel like incredibly lucky that we came across Madeline, who just was perfection, I think, in the way that she did the role. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. And another aspect of the film I really enjoyed was just the pacing. You really let the world kind of soak in. You get to see how some of these cities operate and the different societies that are there. Can you speak to your approach of kind of letting the story breathe and not, rushing from place to place and kind of having those smaller moments? Kind of, it feels very much lived in as a result.
Cheers. Well, it basically, the approach was film too much, have too much material, and then figure it out in the edit. The first cut of the movie was like 4.5 hours, and I had a very supportive production team and studio, in that they knew we were filming too much a little bit. You know what I mean? They knew we were going to have too much of material and that we would compress it. But what happens in a nice way, I think, when you have too much is, and you can feel it, I think, when you watch the film, is that we shot a lot of scenes, but then we're just taking shots from scenes, just little moments, and compressing them together and implying moments in their life or in their journey, that just little tiny fragments of a much larger piece of time. And it's really hard to get those moments in a normal film, because trying to convince the studio that we should go to the top of a mountain in Vietnam to just get a shot of a boat. You know what I mean? It's so expensive and crazy that all that stuff always goes away. You never get that flavor that you sort of associate, say, with like a Terrence Malick movie or something. And so I was really important to me that at the end of the shoot for the last month, that we basically traveled to 5 different countries and took Madeline and John David with us and just shot all this material that was very organic, it wasn't control, like we didn't have specific scenes in mind. We just grabbed loads of things and improvised. And then in the edit, tried to pepper them throughout the movie in such a way that you can't quite tell whether that was a scripted scene or that was just one of these sort of documentary moments. And so the language of the film flips quite a lot between like a considered classical film, the way that it's, the camera work is happening, and then to like more of a documentary, organic style, and it just keeps changing gears throughout. And I don't know, I kind of really like that personally, because I kind of have a schizophrenic filmmaking mind, in that I grew up loving Spielberg and I've always wanted to make films like, in the style of people like Kubrick and James Cameron, and these like very like considered storyboarded cinematic thing. But then equally, my first film was more like a documentary, and I got a massive thrill out of how organic that was and exciting it was to have things happen that were just not planned at all. I'm always trying to marry those two opposing styles, and I think this, in the Creator, I got as closest yet to getting that combination,
Yeah, I think you did. And my last question, there's kind of been an obsession of like getting every single detail when it comes to like sci-fi from a fan's perspective, but you leave some, questions up in the air. We don't get all the details. Can you speak to just leaving room for interpretation briefly? Because I thought that was a real strength of the creator.
Oh, thanks. I think it's tricky because when you do a drama and you show it to people, there are so many things they just understand naturally about the world because we live in it every day. But when you do a science fiction that's set, 50 years in the future, people start having loads of random questions about things that are really not important, and they want to know, how does everyone get here from here to there? And you say, in a bus. What kind of bus? Is it like a floating bus, or is it like a like a jet copter? And you go, you wouldn't have those kind of questions in a drama. If it suddenly cuts to a character and they're suddenly in a city, you just accept it. You know what I mean? And you think, oh, they probably got the train. Who cares? But in a sci-fi movie, everyone wants everything explained all the time, or they think they do. And if you start giving them that, you get a very boring film full of too much exposition. And I feel like a science fiction film or a film about the future, the closest similarity is a film, like making a film about a foreign land. So like you go to, say, you make a movie in Japan, or you watch a film that was made in Japan, you're going to see loads of things that just don't make sense to you, that are not part of your culture, that you won't understand. And the film will just brush over them, and it's left to you and your imagination to fill the gaps. And I feel like that's my favorite thing, say, about Star Wars, is that, there's like a shot in Mos Eisley where suddenly these 2 feet just walk in front of frame, like a giant animal in front of the camera. And they never pull wide and show you what that animal is. And there's never a story about what that animal was. And there's so many details, like, dozens all the time in say Star Wars, where it's just left to your imagination. And that's what makes it exciting, is the audience gets to think about and not have all the answers, and in their mind, like, kind of fantasize about what's going on in that world. And I love all that. I don't think films should provide all the answers. They should just ask questions and let the audience have a think about it, like take ownership of it. And like that's the interactivity of a film, is when you the audience has something to do. They're playing a role in this film as well, and they're having to construct the world in their head. And you might have arguments in the car on the way home about what something meant, or what you interpreted from that. And I think that difference of opinion is it keeps the film alive.